Hi everyone! Today we are going to draw some easy animals together. So if you are struggling with drawing animals, let's jump into this project where I'm going to take you from not feeling confident with drawing animals to having a process that you can follow. I use animals on all kinds of products that I create, like my calendars where I pop little pets in that people comment about all the time, as well as my upcoming picture book, which has all kinds of little cute foxes in it that I'll be sharing more about later. So let's dive right into the project. I'm Liz Kohler Brown. I'm a service designer and hand letterer who loves helping creatives find their style and sell their work. This is a quick and easy way to draw animals that can help you gain a lot of confidence when it comes to incorporating animals into your work. I want to note here that this is just kind of a little tiny piece of my process. Of course, I have a whole class on this inside my membership, and you can watch my animal illustrations class right now with a free trial to my membership without paying anything. So check that out below this video. If you finish this tutorial and you're like, I just want more, I want to draw more animals, create characters, and incorporate it into art, that's when you head to that class. So I'll see you there, but let's dive right into the tutorial. So let's look at some examples first so you can get an idea of why you might need to learn to draw animals and how you might incorporate that into your art. So this is one of the first patterns that I started drawing animals for. I had tried it a few times before, but this is the first time I got more confident with it. And this pattern collection where I started drawing animals got more attention than any collection I'd ever made before, and was one of the first that got me a fabric licensing deal, and just got a lot more comments from people who were purchasing the art about, I love the rabbit, I love the fox. People are identifying with these characters, enjoying looking at their little expressions. So that was one of the first experiences that made me realize, like, wow, drawing animals is really powerful. Now I tend to incorporate animals into a lot of my work. So this is my 2025 The Home in Seasons calendar, and each page is like a different season of the year, and I incorporated pets onto a lot of those pages, and so many of my buyers have commented on these pets and the interactions that they're having, like, oh, my cat does that, or my cat looks like that, or my dog looks like that. So throughout my calendar I have like a little sleeping dog somewhere or a little cat hiding somewhere, and just that tiny little touch really makes a big difference for the overall story of the illustration. Here's another example, something that I'm working on right now, finishing up a children's picture book, which I will be sharing more about once I publish this. But I have illustrated so many foxes for this, and this is one of the big inspirations for doing this YouTube video, is I just keep realizing again and again how powerful it is to draw animals. So if you do not feel confident drawing animals, this is time to learn the simple and easy way to do that. So let's dive right into drawing. I just went to Google and I searched Flickr Commons Fox Biodiversity Heritage Library. I recommend this kind of language because the Biodiversity Heritage Library on Flickr is really easy to search. They have a lot of different plants and animals, and for some reason Flickr doesn't do a very good job with organizing their search by date. So I just use Google, and I always include all of that language that I mentioned. What you'll find when you do this is you get vintage images that are in the Creative Commons, so you don't have to worry so much about, what if my thing looks a little bit too much like that image? That's okay if it's in the Creative Commons. Of course, we still want to make it our own, but in the end, this is a really good way to use images that are not, like another artist's work, like AI is doing. So I just screenshotted that by clicking the home button and the power button at the same time, or home button and volume up button at the same time. And then I cropped it, and I'm just going to push this Photos app over to the left. I know you can have a reference image in Procreate, but I really like to just put it over on the side so it's not on my drawing space and I can easily remove it whenever I want. Of course, if you'd rather use that Procreate reference image, you can do that. So here's a bunch of the foxes that I've been drawing for my picture book. I've been trying to create a character that has the mood and emotion that I want to convey. So this is what I recommend when you first start drawing an animal. Stick with the same animal for a long time, draw it over and over in a lot of different poses, and just get used to that particular animal, because knowing like the ratio of the ear size to the nose to how close the eyes are to each other can really help you get better and better at drawing that animal. Some of my early ones are pretty weird, like something's not right with the face there. But then as I draw more and more, I think they get better and better. So that's kind of the goal, is to get used to drawing that animal by drawing it over and over. So let's do this one example, and then you can go continue practicing that animal and then hopefully share it with me online so I can see it. The first line that we're going to draw is called the action line, and that is a line that basically goes through the whole body of the animal and gives it some nice fluidity. A lot of times when people first start drawing animals, they just dive right in, and then the animal ends up looking like a little bit blocky, like just not a lot of flow and movement to it. So I do recommend, this is kind of a tried and true method that illustrators have used for all of history, so I'm sure it works if that many people have used it as their method. Next, we're going to go through and just do geometric shapes. So how big is the head circle compared to the overall body? Maybe about that big. It doesn't have to be perfect, so don't worry so much about perfection here. Just try to get some overall shapes. So this one's like a distorted square. You might just do ovals. So take some time here to just go through looking at your picture and just use geometric shapes to circle any little piece of the composition that you know you want to include. So of course we're going to simplify this a little bit. This isn't going to be as much detail as you're seeing in this image, but we do want to at least capture the overall mood of the fox. So I want to note here that I'm changing a couple of things about this composition. One, I wanted to move the two back legs to be this one and this one rather than the front one and this one. So I'm switching up which leg goes first. I'm changing the size of the tail. I just wanted this to be the kind of fox breed that has that bigger tail. So this is where we want to differentiate from our reference image, right? We don't want our fox to look exactly like the fox here, because then it's just copying, right? I mean, that is a style of drawing, but I think ideally as an illustrator, we would kind of be building a story and a style rather than just copying someone else's drawing. So we've got those geometric shapes down with a few little details and markings, and then we can make that invisible and start a new layer. And I'm using the sketching pencil for my Everything Bagel Brush Set, which we'll link below, but of course you can do this with any brush. I'm going to get a different color so it's really easy to see when I'm sketching this new layer. And this layer is going to be a little bit more refined. This isn't my final, but it's a time for me to zoom in and get a little bit more of the angles. So like, where does that ear come down to the back of the head, and where does the head become neck? So I'm just taking my time here using my original geometric sketch as a guide. So that's kind of guiding me along on this process. And keep in mind, this can be as detailed or as, you might say cartoonish as you want it to be. I mean, it's your personal style. You can go super detailed and realistic. I do think the more cartoon style would be more trending for something like picture books. And then as you get into more adult products, you might see more realistic stuff. So something to think about: who is your market? Who are you making art for? And think about what they're gonna like. And so you may, as you do this process, notice some issues like, oh, I thought that leg was supposed to be here, but it actually ended up being here. So that is where you can use your freehand selection tool. Like, I feel like there's a little bit too much space here. So I'm just gonna freehand select and bring this over a smidge. And that way we don't have way too much neck on this fox. And I do that a lot as I'm drawing these. I grab that freehand selection tool and I just adjust, like change a little bit here, change a little bit there. Doesn't have to be exactly how this fox looks. The main goal is for it to look like a fox, you know, for anyone who's looking at your work to look at it and say, oh, that is definitely a fox and not some other animal. So I'm going to continue the same process on this whole composition, looking at this reference image, making little adjustments with the freehand selection tool as I go. And of course, the more you do this, the more you practice this process, the faster you'll do it. So the first few foxes or whatever animal you're doing, you draw, it's going to take a while. Yeah, it's not a quick process, but the more you do it and the more you draw a specific animal, the faster you'll get at that animal. So that's what I recommend. Choose your animal and go with it for a while. And then when you're ready to try another animal, go for it. So we'll meet up when we're done with this part of the process. So now that we have our line drawing, we have a really simple line drawing, this can be turned into a lot of different things. And I'm just going to make that first sketch invisible so we can just work on this layer. Let's say we wanted to make this more of a baby fox. We could literally just make the head a little bit bigger, make the belly a little bit bigger. Usually they have like bigger torsos and bigger heads. And immediately it starts looking like a much younger fox. So that is one option. And if you have a certain character in mind, maybe you could do like a, adult and child version. So there's the first one, that's our adult version. And then the second version, we're gonna make the child version. So bump up that head, bump up your belly a little bit, that little, toddler belly that all animals have. You might even make the tail a little bit bigger and bushier. And, this is one specific animal, and you're going to be maybe doing a different animal. So you might have to look up, how do these different animals look at different stages in their lives? And then make little adjustments based on that animal. So it's not always going to be like so simple as just making a head bigger. I know some people are going to comment on YouTube like, hey, you could just make a head bigger and call it a baby, but it helps. It's the beginning steps. So choose the one that you like, and that is the one that we can ink. I'm going to go with the adult fox for my inking, but of course choose whatever you want. So I'm going to use my rough inking brush. I'm pulling up a palette here that I created for my picture book. And again, I'm going to share my whole process of designing and publishing my children's book. So if you want to join in on that process, you can find out more about that below this video. But for now, let's just ink this fox. So I'm going to fill this whole shape, and then we're going to go through and give it some detail, give it some texture, a little bit of personality, and then we'll go from there. So I've gone ahead and turned my sketch black by just alpha locking that layer by swiping with 2 fingers and then tapping fill layer. So now I just have a black outline rather than that light color that was hard to see. I'll create a new layer above that, and every layer moving forward is going to be a clipping mask. So I'm going to tap on the layer and tap clipping mask so that it clips to the red fox shape that I have here on the page. It's question time. I have a question from Mary Sparkle Silver, who says, I so love this, Liz, and she's referencing my master embroidery patterns on your iPad video. She says, I used to embroider pillowcases. What would you think of selling embroidery patterns on finished pieces such as pillowcase, table runner, or tea towel? I absolutely love this idea, Mary, but I do worry a little bit about the scalability if you're doing it by hand. I think the sad truth is that handmade embroidery is very hard to scale and sell at the price that you should be selling it for. So if you did want to get an embroidery machine and design pieces for an embroidery machine, I think that would definitely be scalable and you could make an income from that. Alternatively, what I share in that video is just how to share patterns for hobbyists or for just individuals who love embroidery and don't know how to make their own patterns. I think there's a lot more viability in the market for artists in that angle than there is for actually hand embroidering, which takes so many hours, and it's hard to charge the amount that you should be charging for that kind of embroidery. So, don't take my word for it. Go search some embroidery artists to be sure. But that's just my initial thinking is like, as a digital artist, it would make a lot more sense to design the patterns rather than trying to create all the embroidery yourself if your goal is to sell your work. I have a very simple illustration style, so I don't do a lot of extreme detail when I illustrate, but of course this is going to vary based on your style. And this, especially the eyes part, I try to spend a lot of time on in the sketch phase because this gives it so much personality. The eyes are kind of what tells the story. If we do an eye like that, she looks a little bit sad. If we do it like that, maybe she's angry, just kind of neutral. Eyebrows are so expressive. My story is about fear, and the family members are very compassionate and helping the young one learn about fear. So I have these characters that look kind of sweet and compassionate, but of course you have to go with what works for your style here. I'm also going to add some really simple detail by just adding a little bit of white over that tail. Again, this is a clipping mask layer. All these layers are clipping mask layers. I'm going to give the fox that little white area here. And then we kind of have to decide how much detail are you going to put into this. Are you going to go through and do every single hair? Or, it kind of depends on what the final use for this is. For me personally, I do a lot with pattern design. And so when it comes to pattern, you don't want to have a ton of detail because that doesn't look great on fabric. Even on a lot of wallpapers, it doesn't look very good to have a huge amount of like hairs or textures. So my personal preference is to keep it as simple as possible with just a few little marks here and there to make suggestions about the parts of the body or the shape of the muscle. Little things like that. I mean, the viewer does fill in the rest, so you don't have to know every single detail of your composition. And I think that super realistic style is not really trending right now. What's trending, I think, is a more handmade feel, kind of the anti-AI look. So I might recommend trying that out. You might want to add a little bit of background behind your fox, of course. Let's go ahead and put this fox in a kind of a sunset color scene. And that's going to give you a little bit more contrast to know, okay, do I need to do more detail? Could I utilize this for both like pattern and illustration, maybe greeting cards, things like that? Could this go on like a woodland calendar? So that's why I recommend you go from here, is just start illustrating animals. Even if you don't know what you're going to do with them, it doesn't really matter. Just make some animals, because that is going to start building up your skill, building up your confidence. You've got some animals in your portfolio. You could literally just begin right now a woodland animal series. Don't even have to know what you're going to do with it, but you're going to put those in your portfolio as different woodland animals that you know how to draw. So if you enjoyed this process, keep going, keep drawing more animals. I have a class in my membership on drawing animals and developing characters and developing styles for animals, and you can start watching that right now with a free trial to my membership, and you can learn about that right below this video. But other than that, this baby's done. You could share that on social media. You could create more, put them together in a little scene, whatever you want to do with that. So please share these with me. I really want to see your animals and see what you created with this process. If you like this video, you might also like some of my other iPad art break videos, like my design coloring pages that sell, where you could incorporate your animals into coloring book pages. And my scallop patterns video, which shows you how you could turn your animals into a pattern.